Ever get that feeling like you've been kind of nudged, even manipulated, like into buying something you didn't really need?
Or agreeing to something,
Oh, yeah.
and then you regret it later.
Yeah, totally. Today, we're diving into this whole world of persuasion, like why we're so susceptible to influence and how to actually recognize when it's happening to us. We're going to be looking at Robert Cialdini's influence.
Yeah.
Heard of it?
Oh, it's a classic.
Yeah.
It's a classic for a reason. Cialdini, he lays out these almost invisible strings that compliance professionals use.
Compliance professionals.
Yeah, like marketers, salespeople, even fundraisers,
Oh, wow.
to get us to say yes.
So it's like their secret playbook?
It's more about understanding how our minds work.
Okay.
We all use these mental shortcuts to just get through the world,
Right.
Especially when there's so much information coming at us all the time.
Makes sense.
Think of it like this, a mother turkey. She instinctively cares for her chicks when they make that little cheep, cheep. But researchers, they actually tricked a mother turkey into caring for a stuffed polecat.
What?
Just by playing that sound. It's a hardwired response.
So we're like mama turkeys just responding to these triggers without even realizing it?
Exactly. And those triggers, they become powerful tools in the hands of someone who knows how to use them.
Okay, so like what? Give me an example.
Okay, think. Limited time only sales.
Oh, yeah.
Cialdini found that shoppers bought 3 times more meat
3 times.
during a limited time sale.
Wow. Why is that?
Because scarcity triggers that fear of missing out.
Oh, FOMO. It's a real thing.
It is. It's one of Cialdini's 6 principles of persuasion.
6.
And they all tap into these really deep-seated, that feeling of obligation to repay favors, even unwanted ones.
Okay.
So Cialdini describes how the Krishna organization, they'd give out flowers. And this would often lead people to feel compelled to donate in return, even if they didn't want the flower in the first place.
Interesting. He's like, you feel indebted.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't ask for anything.
It is.
I remember I was buying something from a street vendor once, and I felt pressured to buy something just because he gave me like a free sample.
Yeah, it's a powerful urge. It's really deeply rooted in our social evolution. Reciprocity, it helps build trust and cooperation.
Right.
But compliance professionals can exploit that.
Okay, what's another principle?
Another principle is consistency.
Consistency.
We like our actions to align with our words
Okay.
and our past commitments.
So, like, what do you mean?
Well, in one experiment, people on a beach were more likely to intervene in a staged theft.
A stage theft?
Yeah, if they'd previously been asked by a researcher to watch their belongings.
Oh, so they were more likely to intervene if they had made that commitment.
Exactly. That small act of agreeing created a sense of responsibility.
Wow. I can see how powerful that would be.
And the stakes can get much higher,
Really?
Cialdini describes how, during the Korean War, Chinese interrogators used this principle to get American POWs to collaborate.
Oh, wow.
They started with small, seemingly harmless requests.
Like what?
Like agreeing to simple statements.
Okay.
But then they made those statements public,
Oh, I see.
leading the POWs to feel compelled to act consistently with their new collaborator label.
That's chilling.
Yeah.
Shows how small commitments can snowball. What about social proof?
Oh, yeah.
That's another one I hear all the time.
That's the everybody's doing it principle.
Right.
We look to others, especially in uncertain situations, for cues on how to behave.
Yeah, like what?
Like, think about laugh tracks in sitcoms.
Okay.
We laugh more even at bad jokes because we assume others find them funny.
That makes me feel a little better about my sense of humor.
So we've covered reciprocation, scarcity, consistency, and social proof.
Okay, so what are the last 2?
Well, there's liking. We're naturally inclined to comply with people we like.
Okay.
Tupperware parties.
Oh, yeah.
They're successful not just because of the products,
Right.
but because the invitation comes from a friend, someone you already trust.
The original influencers.
Yeah. And salespeople often try to get us to like them with flattery or by highlighting similarities.
Like, I love your watch. My sister has the same one.
Exactly. It's disarming.
Okay, so liking. And what's the last one?
And finally, there's authority.
Authority.
We're conditioned from childhood to obey authority figures even when it goes against our better judgment.
Right.
The classic example is the Milgram experiment,
So, yeah, I've heard of that one.
where participants were willing to administer potentially lethal electric shocks
Wow.
simply because someone in a lab coat told them to.
That's terrifying, but also really fascinating.
It is.
So authority figures can really, like, short-circuit our critical thinking.
They absolutely can, especially if we don't stop to question their legitimacy or motives. Even simple symbols of authority like titles, uniforms,
Hmm.
or fancy cars can sway our opinions.
Okay. This is making me a little paranoid, like I need to be suspicious of everyone.
Don't worry.
Okay.
Awareness is the first step towards regaining control.
Okay.
Once you understand these principles, you can spot them in action and start making more conscious decisions.
That's reassuring. So how do we actually resist these manipulation attempts?
That's where it gets really interesting. But first, I think we need to take a moment to let all of this sink in.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
This is a lot to process.
It is.
Okay. Yeah, my brain is officially buzzing with all this talk of like persuasion and influence.
Hmm.
It's like I'm seeing the Matrix.
It is a little bit like that.
So how do we navigate this minefield, this psychological minefield? How do we actually resist these tactics?
Well, think of it this way. Awareness is like having a superpower.
Okay,
You see the string, so you're not so easily pulled along.
I like that.
Yeah, so let's start with reciprocation. When someone does you a favor, especially like an unsolicited one,
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself, is this a genuine act of kindness? Or is this a ploy to get me to do something?
Right.
Don't feel obligated to reciprocate if you sense ulterior motives.
So those free gifts, with strings attached, watch out for those.
Exactly. Next up, scarcity.
Okay.
Those limited time only offers.
Wow.
They trigger a primal urge to grab something before it's gone.
Oh, yeah.
But take a breath. Ask yourself, do I really need this or want this, or am I just like reacting to the pressure?
It's like Black Friday.
Yes.
People go crazy for things they probably wouldn't even look at twice on a normal day.
Exactly. They're playing on your fear of missing out.
Totally.
Now let's talk about consistency.
Okay.
Be mindful of those seemingly small commitments.
Like what?
Well, salespeople often use the foot in the door technique,
Oh, yeah.
where they get you to agree to a tiny request and then they
Right,
hit
right,
you with
right.
the big one.
At a free trial,
Exactly.
that turns into a paid subscription.
Yes, it plays on our desire to be consistent with our past actions.
Right.
To avoid this trap, think ahead before you agree to anything,
Even something small.
even something small. Ask yourself, would I be comfortable with this if it leads to a larger commitment?
So think 2 steps ahead. Kind of, what about social proof?
Social proof.
How do we avoid getting swept up in the everybody's doing it mentality?
This one's tricky because we're naturally inclined to follow the crowd, especially when we're unsure of what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, just because everyone's raving about something doesn't mean it's right for you.
Right.
Look for genuine evidence, not just blind imitation.
So take those online reviews with a grain of salt.
Exactly. Don't just follow the herd.
Okay, how about liking?
Liking. We all like to be liked.
For sure.
But be aware of how that desire can be exploited.
Oh, yeah.
Don't let flattery or superficial similarities cloud your judgment.
Oh.
A used car salesman who tells you he loves your shoes and his brother drives the same model car he's trying to sell you.
Red flag.
Yeah, major red flag. Focus on the facts, not the flattery.
Exactly. And finally, we come to authority.
Okay, authority.
We're taught to respect authority figures.
Right.
But blind obedience can be dangerous.
Sure.
Always question authority.
Especially when it comes to, like, compliance.
Especially when it comes to compliance. Don't just take someone's word for it because they have a fancy title or a uniform.
So a doctor might be an expert on medicine,
Right.
but that doesn't make them a financial guru.
Exactly. Ask yourself, is this person a legitimate authority in this particular situation?
Okay.
And even more importantly, are their motives aligned with my best interests?
That's a good point.
Legitimate authorities, by the way, are usually happy to have their expertise questioned.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's the phony authorities that get all defensive.
That is all such great advice. It's like you've given us a decoder ring for the world.
Think of it as a toolkit.
Okay.
Now that you know the tricks, you can start to use them ethically,
To our advantage.
to your advantage. Wait, so this isn't just about defense.
No.
We can use these principles for good.
Absolutely. Think of it as the Jedi mind trick for everyday life.
Now that's a power I'd like to have. But before we start wielding our newfound Jedi powers,
Huh?
let's take a minute to explore some specific examples of how these principles play out, in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's put on our Jedi robes and practice some mind tricks, but, the ethical kind.
Right, of course.
So give us some real-world examples of how we can use these principles, for good.
Okay. So let's say you're negotiating a salary for a new job.
Mm-hmm.
You can leverage the principle of reciprocity
Okay.
by using what's called the rejection then retreat strategy.
Rejection, then retreat.
Yeah.
Okay, break that down for me.
So you start by proposing a salary that's slightly higher than what you're actually willing to accept.
Okay.
And then if they counter with a lower offer, you concede to your actual desired salary.
Oh, I see.
It makes it seem like you've made a concession. And they're more likely to agree because it feels like they've gotten something in return.
It plays on their sense of fairness and
Exactly.
obligation.
Mm-hmm.
Clever.
Or think about how scarcity is used in online marketing.
Okay.
Those countdown timers you see on websites,
Oh, yeah.
they create a sense of urgency,
Hmm?
making you feel like you need to act now before the opportunity disappears.
Those things drive me crazy, but they do work.
Hmm.
I've definitely made impulse purchases because of a ticking clock.
It's a classic tactic. And what about those testimonials and user reviews that you see everywhere?
Yeah, they're everywhere.
That's social proof in action.
Right.
We're more likely to trust a product or service if we see that other people, especially people we perceive as similar to us, have had positive experiences with it.
This is all making so much sense. It's like I'm seeing the world with new eyes.
That's the power of understanding these principles. You become a more savvy consumer, a more effective communicator, and you can even use them to nudge yourself in the right direction.
Yeah. Oh, tell me more about that.
Okay, let's say you're trying to build a new habit,
Okay.
like exercising regularly.
Yeah.
You can use the principle of commitment and consistency
Okay.
by making a public declaration about your goals. Maybe even putting money on the line with a friend.
Interesting.
That external pressure can really help you stick to your commitment.
So it's like we're using these principles to hack our own psychology.
Exactly. And you can even use liking to your advantage by focusing on building genuine relationships
Okay.
and rapport with people.
Makes sense.
Show genuine interest in others, find common ground, and offer sincere compliments.
Mm-hmm.
Those simple acts can make you more likable and influential.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's like a crash course in the science of persuasion.
Is
So what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
awareness.
Awareness.
Absolutely. By understanding these principles, you're less likely to be manipulated by them, and you can even make a positive impact on the world.
It's like having a secret weapon
Yeah.
for navigating, all the complexities of human interaction.
It is.
So listeners, next time you're faced with a persuasive situation, remember what we've discussed today. Think critically, question your assumptions, and use this newfound knowledge wisely. Until next time, stay curious and stay empowered.
Yeah.